Hello and welcome to the shop. I get asked all the time about how I do my finishing on my pens, the CA finish. Recently I got asked about that specifically, but I also got asked, how do you get all the scratches? You know, when you're spinning the pen and you're sanding it, it gets little scratches in it. How do you get those scratches out? So what I'm going to do, I did a video a while back on CA finishes, but my finishing process is a living thing. It's constantly changing. I watch other turners on YouTube, I talk to other turners, and I'm always looking for ideas, tips, techniques, tricks, anything I can do to make finishing just a tiny bit better, just to improve it a little bit. And so that process has changed quite a bit from the previous video. What I'm going to do today is I just finished turning a pen, have not touched it with sandpaper, it's on the mandrel. I'm going to take you back there, set the camera up, and real time I'm going to walk you through the exact process that I use for finishing a pen. I have a really nice flame box elder blank on the lathe. It's absolutely beautiful wood. The most important thing when you're getting ready to finish is your finishing cut. After you've got this thing turned down to where it's sized to your bushings, you want that one last cut, and it's just very light where you just clean up the surface. The nicer your finishing cut, the easier your sanding will be. And I've got a fairly nice finishing cut on this blank, so I shouldn't have any issue at all. I'm going to use 4 different grits of sandpaper to sand this blank. I'll start out with a 150 grit, then I'll go to 240, 320, and finally I'll finish up with a 400 grit. Occasionally I will use 600, but I find that 400 is sufficient for probably 90% of the blanks that I turn. Before I start sanding, I always turn my lathe down to the slowest possible speed that the lathe will spin. Normally I would have some dust collection going, but because I'm doing this real time and I want to talk through the process, I am going to forego the dust collection. I highly recommend having some form of dust collection while sanding, especially because you really should not be breathing the dust that we're creating as we sand. I'm going to start with the 150. I generally apply very light pressure and just keep the piece of paper moving back and forth over the blank. You can see that it's getting longer on the back end. I don't stay too long on any one piece of paper. I keep the paper moving and keep fresh paper on the blank as I'm sanding. I feel the blank to see if there are any indentions or anything in it, and there are not. It looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with one more piece of 150 just to make sure. I've got a couple of scratches I want to take out right in that area, for example, and we'll go ahead and hit it with another piece of 120, and we'll clean that up. Keeping it moving will help reduce the scratches in your blank. Also, while your blank is spinning, you can run your fingers back and forth on the blank, and if there are any divots or any humps in your blank, you'll feel them, and then you can take the paper and work them out. I've got a really nice fit on all of my bushings, and that's another thing you're watching for. Try to get it as close to your bushings as you can with your tool, and then you can use the paper to finish it off if it's not perfect. Once I've sanded the blank, and I've checked it out, and I don't notice any major marks in it, and I've taken all the flaws out, I bring my paper over and I sand with the grain. Now what this will do is your sandpaper is going to put scratches in your blank, and if it does, this is the best way to get them out. By sanding with the grain, it will, before going to the next grit, it will remove those scratches. I'm just going to dust my blank off, and I'm going to take a look at it and see if I missed anything. There's a couple of scratches right there. One on the back here. I don't put a lot of pressure because you can flat spot your blank if you do that, and you definitely don't want to do that because it just won't look right when you made it up to the parts. Okay, I'm really happy. Oops, I see one right there. I'm really happy because as I'm looking at this, I don't see any scratches on the blank. It's time to go to the 240. Once again, I do not stay in any one place. I keep the paper moving, and I constantly feed the paper through my fingers to keep a new piece on the blank at all times. With the 240, I don't have to sand that far into the blank. You can see I've got a beautiful finish. It feels just as smooth as glass, but I'm going to go ahead now while I've got a little piece of paper left, and I'm going to look for scratches. And I just really don't see much of anything on there. It's looking really nice. This piece of wood is not scratching up at all. Okay, I'm very happy. I'm just going to go ahead and lightly hit the surface of the wood, and I'm not putting hardly any pressure at all. I'm going to knock off the dust, and we're going to jump up to the 320. That blank looks absolutely gorgeous. I just love the spalting in it and the red. It's beautiful. We're done with the 320. Last, we're going to take the 400 and do our final sanding. And I'm looking this blank over, and I don't see any scratches at all on the blank, so I've got a beautiful surface. Very happy with that. I'm ready now to apply a CA finish. I don't like to apply CA with my bushings on the lathe because as I wipe the CA onto the blank, I actually wipe it onto the bushings as well. And what happens is I build up a little film between the blank and the bushing, and when I break them apart, it can chip the CA glue at the end of the pin. So I like to use some non-stick bushings. Now, I made these probably 2.5 years ago, and I've been using them ever since. They seem to last forever. I do have a video on how to make these non-stick bushings, and I'll put a link to that below. But what I'm going to do right now, shut the camera off, I'm just going to remove these bushings, get my non-sticks on there. We'll come back and we'll finish finishing this pin. I'm ready for a CA finish, but before I finish, I need to clean the blank, and I like to use a little denatured alcohol. I just take a little paper towel, fold it over, get some alcohol on it, and then I'll wipe the pin back and forth. It kind of gives you a glimpse of what it's going to look like. Then lastly, I'll fire the lathe up and rub off any dust that's left or any residue that could be left on the outside of the blank. Now there's a couple reasons for doing this. One, I'm cleaning the dust off the blank. The second reason is in some woods that's a bit oilier, it'll clean the oil off the surface and it'll let me get better adhesion with the CA finish. I'm going to let this spin for just a few minutes and fully dry. You need to make sure the denatured alcohol will evaporate quickly, and you need to make sure you give it plenty of time to evaporate because any moisture underneath your CA glue can cause white spots. I'm just rubbing my finger along the blank, and the reason why I'm doing that is there is dust from the paper towel, and this knocks it off. I don't want that dust in my finish. My blank has been sanded to 400. There are no visible surface scratches, and the surface of the blank has been cleaned with denatured alcohol. For applying the CA glue, I like to take paper towels and I just cut them into somewhere between 3/4 and 1 inch strips. I use these to apply the CA as well as the polish and to remove the polish. I'm going to be using a thin CA, and I'll use Stickfast brand, and you want to make sure when you buy your CA and you're going to use it for finishing that you get a CA that specifies it is for finishing. I will be using paper towels to apply the finish, but the CA, because it's thin, very easily soaks through those towels and will get on your finger. So what I like to do is use a little painter's tape. And I just wrap my finger up. And this way the CA sticks to the tape and not my finger. I'll start out by taking a paper towel, I'll fold it in half, and then I'll fold it in quarters. I turn the lathe on, and I like to apply thin CA by drooling it onto the blank. I'll wipe the paper towel back and forth to make sure that I spread the glue evenly. And this will dry in about 10-15 seconds. It'll be dry to the touch. Right now, I can touch this blank and the CA is not tacky at all. We're immediately going to fire the lathe back up. We'll grab another paper towel, fold it in quarters again. The second coat will take a tiny bit longer to dry, probably about 30 seconds. And we'll go ahead and apply a third coat. I'll generally flip the lathe off between coats and just kind of look at it, make sure I didn't put any ridges in it or anything. So far, it's pretty smooth, looks good. I'll go ahead and apply my fourth and final coat. Take a quick peek at it. It's drying nicely, it looks good. At this point, while the lathe is spinning, a quick spritz of activator, and I'm using stick fast activator. Once you hit it with the activator, it's instantly dry. The surface feels amazing. It's nice and smooth, no ridges, no bumps. I've applied 4 coats of thin CA. Now I'm going to come back and use a coat of medium CA. Now with the medium, a lot of this depends on the surface of the wood. This wood has a very nice surface. It's not very porous. If you're doing wood like, say for example, a piece of oak, oak has a lot of, and Paduke, woods like that have a lot of grain. And what you'll notice in the grain is the CA will go down into the porous areas, but it leaves a little divot there. So you want to put multiple coats until you fill those areas and they are level with the surface of the pen. If you do not do that, what will happen is when you polish, the wax or the polish will get into those divots and you have white specks on the outside of your pen. So with this blank, I really think I'm probably only going to need 1 coat of medium CA. I may go ahead and put 2 just because I think it'll level it really nicely. So let's go ahead and apply some of the medium. With the medium, I use the same paper towel. I like to squirt a bead of medium onto the paper towel, and then I like to apply it to the blank. And I move the towel back and forth, leveling the CA. I'll then throw this towel away. With the thin, I'll use the same paper towel for the front and back blank. I don't like to do that with the medium. Get us another bead of glue on there. Alright, quick shot of activator. And we'll take a peek at it. Now I've got a really beautiful surface on there. It is nice and smooth. It's starting to shine. I think what I'm going to do is, there are no divots or any bad areas, so I'm going to go ahead and just put 1 more coat. This will give it a really nice top coat. You want to work rather quickly. You don't want to waste too much time while you're applying this, because if you do and it gets tacky, I have messed up in the past and had it grab the paper towel and basically CA the paper towel to the blank, and that just stinks. Quick shot of activator. Our blank is completely dry and ready for the next step. I'm preparing to start sanding with these 2-sided finishing pads. Now, we took a lot of care while turning this blank and while sanding it to make sure that the ends mated perfectly with the bushings. We've added 6 coats of CA glue, which will change the thickness of the blank. So what I like to do is get my nonstick bushings off the lathe and get my turning bushings back on for the finishing pads. That lets me make sure that I have these mated once again to the perfect diameter of the bushings so that I get the best possible fit when I assemble my pen. Now when you're removing these bushings, you'll notice something, and that is that they tend to stick to the pen. This is what I was referring to when I talked about the bushings earlier. The bushings will stick to the pen. The difference is when you take these off, the glue will not stick to the bushing, so I can twist it right off, and you can see I got a little fingernail of glue on the end of my blank. We'll bring the other one down and just get it to the end of the mandrel, give it a little pop, and she comes right loose. Let me show you what I like to do at this point. I've got a piece of 120 grit sandpaper here. I like to put it on a perfectly flat surface, and I like to swirl the blanks on that surface. And what that will do is that will remove the fingernail and give me a perfectly flat surface to mate my parts to. I do both the interior and the exterior side of the blank. And you can see I've got a beautiful flat finish there. Let's go ahead and get the back blank off. Get our bushings back on. To use these sanding pads, I like to dip them in water. So I keep a little container of water handy. I dip the pads in the water, and I don't rub hard on the pen. I just lightly rub the pad back and forth on the pen, and what you'll feel is that the ends, if there's any CA glue, that's what you're working to remove. I just scuff the surface up lightly. I've got a great fit all the way down. I'm going to flip the pad over, use the other side. Just quick sanding once again. Wipe the slurry off and go to the next pad. You don't want to sand very aggressively because your coat of CA is so thin. All you're trying to do is level out that surface to make sure it is as smooth as possible and to clean up the ends of the blank so that it mates properly with the bushings. We'll dry it off. I've got a perfect fit at my bushings, and the pen's starting to look pretty good. It's starting to get a little bit of a shine to it. I gave the blank just a second to finish drying, and I'm going to take a little Hut Ultra Gloss plastic polish. I figure when you put a CA finish on here, you're basically putting a plastic coating on there, so a plastic polish works great to shine that up. Now I've seen people use everything from the stuff that polishes the headlights in your car to Brasso all the way to toothpaste. Pretty much any polish that will polish plastic will do a nice job for you. I'm going back to my paper towels. I'm just going to fold it in quarters again. Fire the lathe up. And I'm going to put the polish on the blank. And just basically, I'm putting pressure at this point because I'm buffing it in. It's just like waxing your car. You really want to work that polish in there and let the fine abrasives in the polish clean up any fine scratches that you might have in your blank. I'm going to grab a new towel for the back blank. That one's drying, and once again, just like the wax on your car, it's going to dry and then we're going to buff it off. As soon as I'm done applying the wax, I just grab a paper towel and I'll put a little pressure on there, and you can see the wax coming off and you can see the blank starting to shine. A little bit of pressure to finalize the buffing. Notice the shine on this one versus the dullness of the one on the other end of the mandrel. We'll go ahead now and remove the wax from this one. And there we have a beautiful blank. The finish is amazing. I'm going to go ahead and get this pressed into a kit, and I'll come back and show it to you. Let me show you the finished pen. It turned out absolutely amazing. This piece of box elder is just gorgeous. Between the flame and the spalting, it's beautiful. We have a great fit at our cap. We have a beautiful fit at the trim ring, and a perfect fit at the nib. When you finish a pen and you run your finger from the nib to the wood, you should feel nothing. There should be no transition line there. It should be incredibly smooth. When you run your finger along the blanks, front and back, you shouldn't feel any waviness. It should be a perfectly smooth surface. That's a testament to a good finishing cut and a good job sanding the pen. I think this one turned out amazing. I want you to know that if you were to ask 10 different turners how they finish a pen, you would probably get 10 different answers. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. I'm not saying this is the best way. I'm saying that over the last couple of years, through my experiences and through talking with and watching other turners and picking and choosing the best of everybody's method, this is the method that I've put together that works great to me and gives me consistently well-finished pens. I'd like to thank you for joining me for this video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you find it useful. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon. Have a great evening, everybody.